My son's fiance told the wedding planner, "Put his mother's table near the kitchen. I don't want her rehab stories ruining my photos." I'm Caroline Hayes, 12 years sober, founder of 8 recovery centers across the Midwest. But that day, I realized she wasn't just cruel, she was dangerous. Within 2 days, the woman who tried to erase my past would lose her perfect wedding, her fake family, and the secret identity she built to destroy mine. If you're watching this, hit subscribe and listen closely, because this isn't just a story about revenge, it's about how the truth always finds its way home. Ethan was my miracle child. After everything I put him through during my drinking years, I didn't think I deserved him. When I got clean, he was the first person who believed I could stay that way. He came to every chip ceremony, every anniversary. He'd say, "Mom, you're proof people can change." And for 12 years, I did. I built a recovery business from a borrowed office and a prayer. I hired others in recovery. We became a community. But nothing tested my healing like meeting his bride, Madison Lee. She was the kind of woman who called herself humble while judging everything in sight. Her first words to me were, "Oh, you're Caroline, the one with the past." I smiled. Everyone has a past. Some just hide it better. She didn't laugh. She adjusted her diamond bracelet and said, "Ethan mentioned you do community work." "Addiction recovery," I said. She blinked slow, like the word addiction had a smell. "That's admirable," she said. "Most people move on from that sort of thing." I said nothing. I've learned silence tells you who people are. Ethan adored her. He said she made him feel polished. I didn't want polish for him. I wanted peace. But every time I voiced concern, he'd say, "Mom, she's just from a different world." A world where compassion was currency she never spent. 3 months before the wedding, I invited them for Sunday dinner. Madison arrived in all white, a fitted dress, a tiny bag that could barely hold a secret, let alone her ego. When I offered her a seat, she said, "I'll stand. This sofa fabric stains easily." I handed her lemonade. She declined. "I don't do sugar." I tried again. "Coffee?" "Only oat milk, unsweetened." Ethan looked embarrassed. I looked at her purse. Heavy, too heavy for lipstick and phone. Some habits weigh more than they appear. She spoke about her family in Seattle. "Old money," she said. "My father's in real estate. My mother does philanthropy." When I asked which company, she smiled. "We keep things private." Private. That word again. 2 weeks later, I received a call from my insurance provider. A polite voice said, "Mrs. Hayes, we're confirming an authorization for medical scans under your plan." "What scans?" I asked. "For your dependent, Madison Hayes." I froze. I don't have a dependent named Madison. The representative hesitated. "It was electronically signed. By you." I hung up, heart thudding. Someone had used my name, my account, my identity. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with the paper printout. Her signature, my address, her lie. I didn't tell Ethan. Not yet. You can't warn someone blinded by love. You can only wait until the light hurts their eyes. When I saw her again, she was shopping for wedding linens. She waved at me like a celebrity greeting a fan. "Caroline, we found the perfect fabric, imported." I smiled. Imported lies travel faster, too. She blinked, pretending not to hear. That's when I knew Madison wasn't just marrying into a family, she was infiltrating one. I called my business partner, Dr. Dana Ellis. She's a psychiatrist, sharp as glass, loyal as faith. I told her everything, the insurance, the attitude, the purse. She promised to check Madison's background quietly. 3 days later, Dana called back. "Caroline," she said, "something's off. The name Madison Lee is linked to a dissolved nonprofit called Harbor Light Foundation. Does that sound familiar?" It did. It was the first foundation I ever started after rehab, 20 years ago. The one my ex-husband's partner stole funds from before disappearing. The same scandal that almost cost me my first recovery license. Someone had resurrected it. The registration listed a new director, Madison Lee, and the contact number belonged to a burner phone. That's when the puzzle pieces clicked. She hadn't just stumbled into my son's life. She'd sought him out. through him, she'd reached me, and whatever she wanted from my past, she was close to getting it. The rehearsal dinner was the final straw. A rooftop restaurant overlooking the city, candlelight and chatter. Madison wore gold, glowing like she owned the skyline. Halfway through, she stood to give a toast. "Marriage," she said, smiling at Ethan, "is about joining families, no matter how different they are. Some people bring wealth, some experience." The pause stretched. "Ethan's mother," she said sweetly, "has been through so much. She's proof that even troubled histories can find redemption." Laughter rippled through the tables. Ethan's hand tightened around his glass. I didn't flinch. She wanted to humiliate me publicly, but what she didn't know was that I'd already spoken with Detective Rob Denton, the officer who handled the old embezzlement case. He'd found something. Her name appeared on wire transfers connected to that missing partner. Madison wasn't only hiding addiction, she was laundering the very money that once destroyed me. I let her finish her speech. I smiled, because by morning I'd have everything: emails, contracts, and enough truth to make her perfect world crumble. If you've ever been judged by someone who hides behind fake perfection, stay close. What came next at that wedding exposed not just her lies, but the secret I'd buried for 30 years. Tap subscribe and tell me where you're listening from. I promise you won't forget what happens next. People think betrayal starts loud, with shouting, slammed doors, broken plates. But the worst kind starts quiet. A phone call at midnight, a whisper that turns your stomach cold. Mine began with 3 words from my partner, Dana. "It's much deeper." She sounded tired. I could hear papers rustling through the receiver. "Caroline, I've been tracing the Harbor Light Foundation accounts. Your old name is on at least 6 applications, grants, donations, even a government contract." "Under my name?" "Yes, and every form lists Madison Lee as the current director." I pressed the phone to my ear until it hurt. That foundation nearly destroyed my career 20 years ago. I'd shut it down, buried the files, swore never to let it define me again. Now it was walking around wearing my signature like stolen jewelry. Dana continued, "She's been using your reputation, your recovery success, to apply for funding. If this goes public, it looks like you reopened the foundation without a license. So she's framing me. Or she's setting up to disappear with the money." I stared at the dark window over my kitchen sink. My reflection looked older, harder. "I'll handle it," I said. "Caroline, be careful," she warned. "People who build whole lives on lies don't collapse gently." The next morning, I drove to Ethan's apartment. He answered the door half-dressed, surprised. "Mom, what's wrong?" "I just wanted breakfast with you," I lied. Inside, the place smelled like coffee and vanilla candles, Madison's touch. She wasn't there. A suitcase sat open on the sofa, half-packed. While Ethan showered, I looked around. Photos everywhere, smiling, curated moments, but none showed Madison's so-called family. Not one picture of her parents, not even a dog. I checked the frame labels, all new, bought together, staged. On the counter, a receipt fluttered beside the fruit bowl. Prestige character casting, consultation fee $600. My stomach turned. Casting? I folded the paper and slipped it into my jacket. Ethan came out drying his hair. "You okay, Mom? You look pale." "Just tired," I said. He smiled. "Madison's parents are flying in tomorrow. You'll finally meet them at the rehearsal." I nodded. I can't wait. Inside, my pulse said otherwise. That evening, Dana met me at my office. She laid a folder on my desk. Everything I found. Inside were printed photos, email threads, payment logs. Madison had paid 6 different people under false names, 3 women, 3 men, all linked to a small acting agency in Seattle. The same agency on the receipt I'd found. Dana's voice was low. "Your future daughter-in-law is hiring people to pose as her family." I exhaled slowly. "Actors?" "Yes. They've rehearsed backstories, phrases to use, even what wines to order so they sound rich." "Why would she do that?" Dana shrugged. Because she doesn't have what she pretends to. She needs an illusion. And maybe, to her, you were the final prob, the reformed mother who adds credibility. I stared at the folder. Fake parents, fake money, fake foundation, and a real son about to marry the performance of a lifetime. The rehearsal dinner was set at a boutique hotel downtown. Gold lights, white flowers, waiters with practiced smiles. I arrived early, folder in hand, wearing the same navy dress Madison once called quaint. I wanted to look exactly like the woman she underestimated. Guests began to arrive. Laughter swelled like music. Then Madison entered, glittering in silver, her parents trailing behind. He looked distinguished. She looked delicate. Too delicate, like porcelain straight from a prop shelf. Madison spotted me and smiled wide. "Caroline, you made it." Her mother figure added, "Such a pleasure, dear. Madison speaks so highly of you." Her accent wobbled. Midwestern one second, Southern the next. I returned the smile. "Lovely to meet you. How was your flight?" The man replied, "Seattle to Ohio is always brisk." Seattle. Yet their name tags read Hartwell, Palm Beach. I asked lightly, "Which neighborhood in Palm Beach?" The woman hesitated. "Oh, the good one." There it was, the same answer Madison gave me weeks ago. I nodded politely. "I hope the humidity's treating you well." The man chuckled nervously. "Yes, very moist." Moist. That sealed it. No one born in Florida says that with a straight face. I excused myself and stepped outside. Dana was parked across the street, waiting. Through my phone, I whispered, "They're here, all 6 of them." "Keep your voice steady," she said. "Our detective friend just confirmed payment deposits hit their accounts this morning. She's keeping the act alive until the wedding." Inside, dinner was being served. Madison clinked her glass and stood to give another toast. "I just want to thank everyone for being here, especially Ethan's mom, who reminds us that people can overcome anything with enough humility." Guests chuckled awkwardly. Ethan looked at her, confused, hurt. I smiled again, calm, deliberate, because I'd decided something right then. I wouldn't ruin the rehearsal. I'd ruin the performance tomorrow. As she spoke, I slipped the folded casting receipt onto her plate under her napkin. When she lifted it later, her smile faltered for a fraction of a second. She looked around the room until our eyes met. I raised my glass. "To honesty," I said softly. She swallowed hard, turned away, and drained her wine. That tiny flicker of panic told me everything. She knew the show was over. She just didn't know when the curtain would drop. That night, Ethan called me. "Mom, what happened? Madison seemed upset." "She probably realized lies don't stay hidden long," I said. He sighed. "Please don't start. I just want this wedding to go smoothly." "So do I, sweetheart." I looked at the folder on my table, the forged insurance forms, the foundation theft, the casting contracts. "Believe me," I said quietly, "I'm doing everything to make sure it does." After the call, I poured myself herbal tea. The steam curled up like smoke from a candle long burned out. I whispered to the empty room, "You tried to use my past against me, Madison. But you forgot I built my life learning how to spot a relapse, and yours is about to hit the public stage." If you've ever watched someone build their life on lies, you know the silence before truth hits is the loudest sound in the room. Stay with me. What happened at that wedding reception changed more than my son's future. It changed mine. Tap subscribe and let's see how the truth made its entrance. They say a wedding is supposed to be the happiest day of your life. But for my son, it became the day every secret in the room came crashing down. His bride walked down the aisle glowing in white lace, but underneath that dress was a purse full of pills and a plan that could have destroyed us all. By the time the band struck their first note, her perfect family had vanished, her smile had cracked, and the truth everyone was too polite to see finally tore through the lies she'd built around us. The sun that morning looked too clean, too innocent for what was coming. I stood by my window, smoothing the navy dress Madison once called outdated.
I'd worn it on my first day sober. Back then, it was a reminder that I didn't need to hide. Today, it was armor. My phone buzzed. A message from Dana. All verified, the contracts match. She paid every one of them from a fake company account. Then another from Detective Denton. Copies ready. I'll wait outside the venue. You give the word. I took a long breath. All right, I told my reflection. Let's finish this. The ceremony was held at a country club on the edge of town. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, guests whispering about old money and good taste. I watched Madison glide through the doors like a queen entering her court. She smiled at Ethan as if she hadn't forged my name, stolen my foundation, and rented her parents. That's the thing about narcissists. They rehearse their kindness better than most people live it. The vows were beautiful, rehearsed down to the syllable. Ethan's voice shook. Hers didn't. When the officiant asked if anyone objected, I kept quiet. I wasn't there to stop the wedding. I was there to stop the lie. At the reception, I was seated exactly where she'd ordered, the back corner near the kitchen doors. Fine by me. I could see everything from there. Waiters passed trays of champagne. Her parents laughed too loudly. Her uncle mixed up the names of his own uncles. Even her cousin checked a note card when someone asked about college. It was theater, polished, expensive, fragile. When the speeches began, Ethan's best man spoke first. Then Madison's father rose, clearing his throat like a stage actor. Madison has always been a shining example of grace, he said. He raised his glass towards Ethan, and we're thrilled to welcome such a fine young man into our family. Applause, flashbulbs, all lies.
Then Madison took the microphone. She smiled, her voice sweet as syrup. Marriage, she said, is about uniting families, no matter where they come from. Some people bring wealth, some bring wisdom, and some bring lessons. Her eyes slid toward me. My future mother-in-law has been through a lot. She's a survivor of circumstances she created herself. A few nervous chuckles broke the silence. She's taught me something important, that even those from, let's say, more difficult backgrounds can find redemption if they try hard enough. The room went still. Ethan's face turned pale. I felt the familiar burn of shame trying to rise up, but I'd spent 12 years learning how to stare shame down. I stood slowly. "Thank you, Madison," I said, "for reminding me how far I've come, and for proving how far you have to fall." The guests froze. Madison laughed awkwardly. "Caroline, please, it's a toast." "Yes," I said, "and I have one too." I walked to the front of the room. My voice stayed calm. "Ladies and gentlemen, before we raise another glass, I think you deserve to know the truth about this celebration." The fake father stood. "This is inappropriate." "Sit down, Mr. Hardwell," I said. Or, should I say, Mr. Patterson? A ripple ran through the crowd. He went rigid. Dana appeared at the doorway, holding a folder. "Caroline," she said, loud enough for the room to hear, "we confirmed the contracts. These people are hired actors." Gasps. Madison's face drained of color. Dana continued. 6 individuals from Prestige Character Casting in Seattle, paid $1,500 a day. Their job? To pose as Madison's family. The mother reached for her purse. I lifted a hand. "Don't bother. We already have the receipts, including one for that Tiffany necklace you claimed was an heirloom, bought last Tuesday." Guests began whispering, pulling out phones. Ethan turned toward Madison, stunned. "Is this true?" he whispered. She shook her head. "They're lying." Detective Denton stepped forward from the back. "Not lying," he said. "Investigating. We've traced multiple payments from an account under Harbor Light Foundation. And, Mrs. Hayes, I believe that's the nonprofit that was stolen from you years ago." I nodded. "The same one." He held up papers. "We also found insurance forms forged under Caroline Hayes' name. Madison added herself as a dependent. That's insurance fraud, forgery, and identity theft." Madison backed away, trembling. "You can't prove that." Dana spoke softly. "We already have."
She laid a bottle on the head table. Amber label, pharmacy tag. Oxycodone, 3 different doctors, 4 different pharmacies. Gasps again. She's been doctor shopping for months. Madison's hand flew to her bag. The clasp popped open, and pills spilled across the tablecloth, dozens of them. They rolled toward the candles like beads of truth. Someone screamed. A flash went off. The illusion shattered. Ethan's voice was barely a whisper. "Madison, tell me this isn't real." She looked at him, mascara bleeding down her face. "I just wanted to belong," she sobbed. "I was going to fix it after the wedding." "Fix it?" he said, stepping back. "You built our whole life on a lie." She reached for him. He shook his head and slid off his ring. "I can't do this," he said quietly. Then louder to everyone. "The wedding's over." The room stayed silent, except for the sound of pills hitting porcelain. Dana closed her folder. Detective Denton turned to me. "Mrs. Hayes, thank you for cooperating. We'll handle the rest." I nodded, my voice steady. "I didn't do it for me. I did it for him." Ethan stood beside me, staring at the wreck of what should have been his wedding. His voice cracked. "You knew all along?" "I suspected," I said, "but you had to see it for yourself." He nodded slowly. "Thank you, Mom, for not letting me live a lie." He wrapped his arms around me, and for the first time in years, he didn't feel like the boy I'd failed. He felt like the man I'd raised. As the guests drifted out, Madison sat alone, shaking, surrounded by her fake family's abandoned chairs. Her perfect day had turned into her intervention. I almost pitied her. Almost. Because deep down, I knew what it meant to lose control. The difference was, I'd fought my demons. She'd hired hers to dance at her wedding. If you've ever watched someone's lies crumble right in front of them, you know the truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to show up. Stay with me, because after the police left and the lights went out, I found something in her purse that proved this wedding wasn't the end of her deceit. It was just the beginning. Hit subscribe if you're still listening. What came next changed everything I thought I knew about my own past. Everyone thought the drama ended when the police took Madison away, but an hour after the guests left, I found something inside her purse that made my hands shake. It wasn't pills this time. It was an envelope with my maiden name on it, one I hadn't used in 30 years. And what was inside proved that Madison hadn't just stumbled into my son's life. She'd been sent there. The ballroom was almost empty when I finally sat down. The candles had burned low, glasses half full, flower petals scattered across the floor like confetti after a storm. Ethan stood near the doors, speaking with Detective Denton. His tux jacket was off, his shoulders slumped, but his eyes were clear, clearer than they'd been in months.
I looked at the table where Madison had sat. Her purse was still there, the one she guarded like a lifeline. It had tipped onto its side during the chaos, half open. I stared at it for a long minute before reaching out. Inside, I found the usual: lip gloss, perfume, a broken compact, and the pharmacy bottles now rattling loose. But beneath all of that, at the bottom, was an ivory envelope. No address, no stamp. Just one word in blue ink across the front: Caroline. The handwriting stopped my breath. I'd seen it before, a lifetime ago. It belonged to one man, Samuel Mercer, my ex-husband's business partner. The man who'd embezzled money from my first foundation and vanished, leaving me to face public shame. I thought he was dead, but this letter, this neat, practiced scrawl, proved otherwise. I slid it open carefully. Inside were old bank receipts and a single sheet of paper, typed, precise. Caroline, if you're reading this, then the cycle has completed. She came to you just like I promised. I taught her what she needed to know. She believes this will restore our family name. Do with that what you will. There was no signature, just an account number at the bottom and a seal I recognized from the old Harbor Light Foundation. My throat tightened. The she he mentioned had to be Madison. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. It wasn't random. It wasn't coincidence. Madison wasn't just a liar looking for status. She was Samuel Mercer's daughter.
The daughter of the man who ruined my life. Detective Denton noticed me holding the letter. "You okay, Mrs. Hayes?" I nodded slowly. "I think I finally understand why she chose us." He looked at the paper. "What's that?" "Proof," I said softly. "She wasn't after Ethan's money. She was after me." He frowned. "Revenge?" "Maybe, or maybe she thought she was fixing her father's mistake." "Do you want me to add that to the report?" "Not yet," I said. "Not until I know what this account number means." He studied me for a moment. "You're handling this better than most." I smiled faintly. "Recovery teaches you one thing. You can't control what people do to you, only what you do next." By midnight, the hotel was quiet. Ethan and I drove home in silence. He stared out the window, his ring finger bare. I wanted to say something, but words felt too heavy. When we reached my driveway, he finally spoke. "I don't understand, Mom. Why would someone do all this?" "Because broken people break things," I said gently. "Even weddings." He gave a small, sad laugh. "You think she loved me?" "I think she wanted something she couldn't have. Peace." I handed him the letter. He read it twice, his face hardening. "Who's Samuel Mercer?" I swallowed. "He was your father's partner. He stole from me, from our foundation, from families we were helping. Then he disappeared." "And Madison?" "His daughter, apparently. Maybe she grew up hearing one version of the story and wanted to punish the villain she thought I was." He stared at the letter again. "So she targeted me to get to you?" I nodded. "Looks that way." He closed his eyes. "This feels like a nightmare." "I know," I said softly. "But sometimes the truth doesn't free you right away. It just stops the bleeding." The next morning, Dana arrived at my house with coffee and a laptop. "I couldn't sleep," she said, "so I traced the account number you sent me." She turned the screen toward me. "Caroline, this isn't just an old account. It's active." "Active?" "Yes. The balance was transferred last week, $200,000, to an offshore bank under the name SM Financial Services." I stared at the monitor. "SM," I murmured. "Samuel Mercer." Dana nodded grimly. "He's alive. And if I'm right, he used Madison to finish what he started." My stomach twisted. "Do you think she knew?" "She knew enough to play her role," Dana said. "But I don't think she realized he was using her, too." Later that afternoon, Detective Denton called. "Mrs. Hayes, we've contacted the FBI. Turns out this isn't just local fraud. That account you gave us links to 3 other shell companies across 2 states. So it's organized. Looks like it. And we believe Madison's father has been laundering money through fake nonprofits for years." I closed my eyes. Of course. That was Samuel's style. Make the con look like compassion. Even now, decades later, he was still using other people's pain to profit. When I hung up, Ethan came into the room. He looked different, tired but steadier. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now," I said, "we tell the truth. All of it." He nodded. "I'll stand by you," he said, "even if it means reopening old wounds." I smiled. "That's the only way they heal." That evening, I drove back to the recovery center. The halls smelled like coffee and sanitizer, just like the first day we opened. On the wall hung a photo of our first graduating group, 12 men and women holding their certificates, smiling like they just found daylight. I stood there for a while, thinking of Madison. How addiction doesn't always look like a needle or a bottle. Sometimes it looks like a lie you can't stop feeding. Sometimes it looks like revenge pretending to be love. I whispered to the empty hallway. "I forgive you, Madison. Not because you deserve it, but because I refuse to let you finish what your father started. Some betrayals end with shouting. Mine ended with an envelope. If you've ever discovered someone was sent into your life to reopen an old wound, you know forgiveness isn't weakness. It's the lock that keeps the past from walking back in. Stay tuned. Because the next call I got wasn't from the police. It was from Madison herself, calling from rehab with one last secret I never saw coming. Hit subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. What she said next still gives me chills."
3 weeks after the wedding that never was, my phone rang at 2:17 a.m. The number was blocked, but the voice on the other end froze me where I sat. "Caroline," she whispered, "it's Madison." Her tone was hoarse, stripped of all the polish and poison she used to wear. "I know you hate me, but you need to hear what my father's planning next." And that's when I learned the wedding wasn't the end of her deception. It was just the opening act. I turned on the lamp beside the couch. My recovery workbook was still open where I'd fallen asleep over it. "Madison," I said carefully, "where are you?" "In rehab, Prescott Recovery, Arizona." "Why are you calling me?" She inhaled shakily. "Because you're the only one he still listens to." I let the words hang. "Who?" "My father," she said, "Samuel Mercer." She said the name like a confession. I could almost hear her crying, trying not to. "He's not dead. He's been hiding in Scottsdale under another name. He sent me to you because he wanted me to ruin you publicly, said it would make people trust him again once you fell." My fingers clenched around the phone. Why tell me now? Because he's moving money again, millions this time, and if he gets caught, he'll say I did it. I need your help before he disappears for good. The line went quiet except for her breathing. I stared at the dark window. The moon reflected my face back at me, calm but hard. "Madison," I said, "you nearly destroyed my son's life." "I know." "You forged my name, stole from my foundation, humiliated me in front of strangers." "I know." "So why should I believe a word you say now?" There was a pause, then a sound I didn't expect, sobbing, quiet and uneven. "Because I'm clean," she whispered, "for the first time since I was 15, and because I finally realized who my father really is." Something inside me softened, just a little. Addicts lie, but they also break in familiar ways. I recognized the tremor in her voice, the guilt, the exhaustion, the tiny hope that someone might still believe them. "What exactly is he planning?" I asked. She swallowed hard. "He's creating another fake nonprofit. Same pattern, different name. He calls it Bright Horizons Outreach. He's using the money from Harbor Light, plus donations from investors who think he's rebuilding his reputation. But the foundation's a front for money laundering." I closed my eyes. "And you have proof?" "Yes, files, emails, account numbers. I can send them if you help me get protection." "Protection from him?" "He won't let me live if this leaks." After she hung up, I sat in the silence for a long time. Part of me wanted to call the police and let them handle it. But another part, the mother, the recovering addict, the woman who'd once trusted Samuel Mercer, knew this needed care, not headlines. At dawn, I drove to my office. Dana was already there. She looked up from her laptop. "You look like you didn't sleep." "I didn't," I said. "Madison called." Dana's eyebrows shot up. "You answered?" "She's in rehab. Says Mercer's planning another con." "You believe her?" "I don't trust her," I said, "but I believe her fear." Dana nodded. "Then let's get ahead of it." By noon, Detective Denton was sitting across from us with a cup of stale coffee. He listened while I repeated Madison's call, word for word. When I finished, he rubbed his chin. "Bright Horizons, huh? We've seen filings for that name, but nothing solid yet." "She said she has proof," I told him, "emails and accounts." "Get her to send them to a secure address. If she's serious, we can open a federal investigation." "And if she's lying?" Dana asked. He shrugged. "Then we'll know soon enough. People like Mercer can't help repeating their crimes. They just change the stationery." That night, my email pinged with an encrypted file. No subject line. Just one word: truth. Inside were dozens of PDFs, bank records, shell company charts, fake donor lists. At the top of one document was Mercer's new alias, David L. Simons. The amounts made my stomach turn. 3 million here, 5 there, all washed clean through the same kind of recovery charities he once used to destroy mine. At the bottom of one spreadsheet, a familiar name appeared. Ethan Hayes, prospective speaker, Recovery Conference 2025. My chest tightened. Mercer had been planning to use my son as the face of his next fraud. Another public performance, another manipulated family. I called Denton immediately. "Detective, it's worse than we thought.
He's targeting my son again. How? He's trying to sponsor an event under our name to make it look like we've joined forces. Denton exhaled sharply. All right, Mrs. Hayes, sit tight. This time, we're going to end it properly. 2 days later, Denton called from a parking lot in Scottsdale. We found him, he said, checked into a business suite under that alias, Simon's. We're coordinating with the feds. I closed my eyes, whispering a prayer I hadn't said in years. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, he said. We still need Madison to testify, and she's the only link that connects him to those transfers. He paused. You still talk to her? Occasionally. She writes from rehab. Good. Keep her talking. The more she says, the better our case. Her next letter arrived a week later. It was handwritten, shaky but sincere. Caroline, I know I can never undo what I did to you and Ethan. I was desperate to make my father proud, to fix what he told me you ruined. He said you framed him all those years ago. I wanted to prove him wrong, but all I proved was that I became him. Please tell Ethan I'm sorry. I read it twice, then folded it carefully. Forgiveness doesn't come easy, but recovery teaches you to separate the person from the sickness. So I wrote her back.
Madison, the only way to fix your past is to stop running from it. Tell the truth. Help stop him, and you'll start your own recovery the right way. She replied the next day, I will. By early spring, federal agents raided Mercer's office. They seized laptops, files, and hard drives, everything Madison had described. He was arrested quietly, just as he'd once disappeared quietly. When I saw the news headline, my hands shook the same way they did the night she first called. But this time, it wasn't fear. It was release. Ethan came over that evening. He'd heard about the arrest. So it's really over? He asked. For him, maybe, I said. For us, it's just the next chapter. He smiled faintly. Madison's lawyer says she's cooperating. She might get probation. She earned that chance, I said, as long as she keeps telling the truth. He looked at me for a long time. I used to think recovery was just about not using, he said. Now I see it's about not lying. I nodded. Truth is the last addiction any of us learn to keep. Sometimes the people who hurt us the most end up being the ones who show us who we've become. If you're still listening, remember this. Redemption doesn't erase the past. It rewrites the ending. Hit subscribe and tell me where you're watching from, because what happened after Mercer's arrest changed the future of my recovery centers forever, and it all started with one unexpected visitor at my door. 2 months after Mercer's arrest, I thought the past had finally gone quiet, but one rainy afternoon, someone knocked on my office door. A woman in her 50s, dressed in a gray suit, holding a folder with my name typed neatly across it. She said she represented an interested party connected to Samuel Mercer's estate, and when she opened that folder, what she showed me made my stomach drop. It turns out Mercer hadn't just stolen my money, he'd stolen my future too. The recovery center was calm that day. Our clients were in group therapy. The faint hum of their voices carried through the hall like soft rain. I'd finally started to breathe again. No police calls, no headlines, no ghosts. So when I heard that knock, I expected a delivery, not a lawyer, not another storm. Mrs. Hayes, she asked. That's me. She smiled faintly, professional but kind. My name is Rebecca Lynn. I'm with Mercer's legal team. Don't worry, this isn't bad news. That's what people always say before it is, I said quietly. She hesitated. You might want to sit. I motioned for her to continue. She opened the folder and slid a few documents across my desk. These are copies of Mercer's final directives. The courts recovered them after his arrest. He made strange ones. I skimmed the pages. Account numbers, beneficiaries, and then, halfway down the list, my name. Rebecca explained, before his death, Mercer arranged a transfer from one of his offshore accounts into a trust in your name, roughly $500,000. I blinked. He's dead? She nodded. He died of heart failure in custody last week. The funds were legally transferred before the seizure order. I pushed the papers back toward her. I don't want his money. It's not that simple, she said. It was designated as restitution, compensation for the original foundation fraud.
If you refuse it, it goes into government forfeiture. I leaned back, stunned. For years, I'd dreamed of rebuilding what he'd taken, and now, somehow, his death had made it possible. Is this his apology? I asked. Rebecca's eyes softened. I don't think Mercer apologized for anything, but his daughter requested the transfer be honored. Madison? Yes, she signed it before her plea deal, said she wanted to give back what her father stole. That evening, I drove home in the rain. The letter from the estate sat on the passenger seat. The wipers kept rhythm with my heartbeat, steady, uncertain. When I pulled into the driveway, Ethan was already waiting on the porch. "Mom," he said, "you okay?" I handed him the folder. He read silently, lips tightening as he reached the end. "So they're trying to buy forgiveness?" he said. "Maybe," I said, "or maybe they're finally returning what was never theirs." "What will you do with it?" "I'm not sure yet." He sat beside me on the steps. "Madison wrote me again," he said softly. I turned. "You responded?" "I did this time. She says she's volunteering at the rehab center in Prescott, helping new patients with intake." "That's good," I said. "Service keeps us honest." He nodded. "She also said she still wants to make amends, in person." I looked out at the rain. Let her try. Just don't mistake amends for reconciliation. The next week, I met with Dana in my office. We spread Mercer's restitution documents across the desk. "What if we use it to open something new?" she suggested. "A program for families, maybe, for the people who love addicts but don't know how to help." I smiled slowly. A place where the healing starts before the crisis. Exactly. We decided to call it the Haven Project. It wasn't just about recovery anymore. It was about restoration, the kind that ripples through generations instead of stopping at one clean test. A few days later, I got a letter from Madison. "Caroline, I heard about my father's death. I wish I could say I'm relieved, but I'm just sad. He taught me how to lie before he taught me how to love. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that the restitution money came from me. I sold the condo, the jewelry, everything that wasn't real. I needed something good to come from the mess I made. Thank you for answering that phone call. If you hadn't, I'd still be lying. Madison." I read it twice, then folded it neatly and placed it in my desk drawer. Forgiveness isn't something you give once. It's a practice, like sobriety. You wake up and choose it again, every day.
3 months later, the Haven Project opened its doors. We started with 6 families. By the end of summer, there were 20. Ethan ran the workshops on communication. Dana handled the clinical side. And I told my story, the whole story, every Friday night to a room of strangers who saw their own reflections in mine. When I finished, people always ask the same question: how did you forgive her? I tell them the truth. Because she showed me something I'd forgotten, how quickly grace turns to judgment when we forget where we came from. One evening, after a meeting, a young woman approached me. She was trembling, holding a small token in her hand. It was a silver recovery chip. She pressed it into my palm and said, "Madison sent me. She said you'd understand." I didn't speak, just hugged her, because in that moment I knew the circle had closed, not in revenge, but in redemption. Ethan still wears no ring, but he wears peace now. He teaches at the center twice a week and says he's learning more from others than he ever did from the pain. And me? I've learned that survival isn't the end of the story. Telling the truth is. Every lie that tried to bury us became a seed, and from it grew something we never planned, a family, not of blood, but of people who decided the healing is louder than shame. If you've ever had to rebuild your life from someone else's lies, remember this: truth doesn't just set you free, it sets others free through you. Share this story, subscribe, and tell me where you're listening from. Because somewhere out there, another family is still sitting in silence, waiting for proof that the past doesn't have the final word. A year after the wedding that never happened, I stood at the front of a small auditorium, staring at a crowd of faces, recovering addicts, their families, their children. Every chair was filled, every heart raw. It wasn't a gala, it wasn't a fundraiser. It was the Haven Project's first anniversary. And as I stepped up to the microphone, I realized the story that once tried to destroy my family had become the story saving hundreds of others. But what I didn't know that night was that Madison was sitting in the back row.
The center had grown faster than any of us expected. We started with a single room and folding chairs. Now we had 3 full-time counselors, a family liaison office, and a waiting list that stretched for months. Every session, people came carrying their versions of what addiction had taken from them: marriages, trust, self-worth. But tonight was about hope. Ethan handled the slides, a collage of photos, families laughing, graduates from the recovery program, group picnics. I could see pride in his eyes again, the kind that only comes when you've turned pain into purpose. When it was my turn to speak, I walked to the podium holding nothing but my old chip, my 12-year coin. The crowd hushed. I used to think recovery ended when the craving stopped, I began. But then I met people who made me realize something deeper. Recovery isn't about avoiding relapse. It's about choosing truth again and again, even when the truth hurts. I told them about the wedding, briefly, respectfully, about the humiliation, the lies, the pills scattered across the table like spilled secrets, and how, out of all that chaos, came clarity. When someone tries to bury you in shame, I said, they forget one thing: seeds grow in dirt. There was soft laughter, then quiet applause. After the event, people lined up to talk. A teenage boy hugged his mother. A woman whispered that her sister had finally checked into rehab after watching my online story. Every word felt like a small miracle, like all that pain had been recycled into light. When the crowd began to thin, I noticed a figure lingering by the back door. A woman with auburn hair, shorter than I remembered, wearing a simple gray cardigan. It took me a moment to recognize her. Madison. She looked human. No designer dress, no armor of vanity, just tired, clear-eyed, and humble. I walked toward her slowly. For the first time, she didn't avoid my gaze. "Caroline," she said softly, "you look good." "So do you," I said. "How long?" "1 year last week," she smiled faintly. "Clean." I nodded. "Congratulations." She hesitated, then held out a small white envelope. "No tricks," she said. "I just wanted you to have this." Inside was a photo, grainy, folded at the corners. It showed a little girl sitting on a man's shoulders. The man was Samuel Mercer. The child was Madison. On the back, in neat handwriting, it said, "He taught me lies. You taught me truth. Thank you for finishing what he started the right way." I looked up at her. "I didn't do it for him." "I know," she said. "You did it for everyone he hurt, including me." We stepped outside into the cool night air. The center's lights glowed behind us, warm against the darkness. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then Madison said quietly, "I'm working now, full-time counselor's aide at Prescott Recovery. We use some of your materials." I smiled. "Good, keep helping. That's how you stay free." Her eyes shimmered. "I never thought you'd even look at me again." "I almost didn't," I admitted. "But forgiveness isn't for the forgiven. It's for the forgiver." She nodded, wiping a tear. "I'm sorry, Caroline, for everything." "I know," I said, "and I accept that." We stood there a moment longer, listening to the wind through the trees. She handed me one more thing, her recovery chip. "I owe this to you," she said. "No," I said gently, closing her hand around it. "You earned it." After she left, Ethan walked up behind me. He'd been watching from the doorway. "Was that her?" he asked. "Yes," I said quietly. He nodded slowly. "How'd it feel?" "Like closing a chapter," I said. "Not erasing it, just finally putting it down." He smiled, slipping his arm around my shoulder. "She's different," he said. "I could see it." "She is," I said, "because pain changes people. The question is, how?" We stood there in silence, watching the last few guests drift away under the glow of the streetlights. The sign outside the center read, "The Haven Project, a family recovery space." Underneath, in small letters, the motto Ethan had written, "Healing begins where judgment ends." That night, I sat alone in my office, looking at the old photo Madison had given me. Her father's face, frozen in time, her small hands clinging to him. I realized then that the story hadn't been about revenge or even justice. It had always been about breaking cycles, addiction, shame, silence, and the lies we inherit when we don't know how to tell our own truths. I whispered into the quiet, "Rest now. The damage ends here." Then I took my coin from my pocket, set it beside Madison's picture, and turned off the light. If you've ever been betrayed, if someone's lies have cost you years of peace, let this be your reminder. You can start over. You can build something honest out of everything that broke you. And you can forgive without forgetting who you are. If this story touched you, subscribe and share it. Because somewhere out there, another family is still sitting in silence, waiting for proof that the past doesn't have the final